Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. I actually wasn't going to do a video this week. I was planning on getting into the Sifu Early Access. Unfortunately, that's not available yet on the PlayStation Store. So instead, we're going to talk about Sony acquiring Bungie. Let's get into it. Alright, so hot off the heels of Microsoft's acquisition of ABK, Sony says, hey, we're picking up Bungie. Now, this is not a direct response to the ABK acquisition. These things take a lot of time. Sony's obviously been in talks with Bungie since last year. If anything, this might be kind of a countermeasure to Microsoft's previous acquisition of ZeniMax, but really I think this is about Sony strategically placing themselves for long term, trying to patch out a weakness of theirs, right? They put out these amazing AAA single-player narrative experiences. Sony is not known for putting out first-party games as a service. So they don't really have anything exclusive to the Sony ecosystem on par with, let's say, something like a Destiny 2, or like a Division 2, or Warzone, Fortnite, Apex, Sea of Thieves on the Xbox side of things, right? Halo Infinite. So this should get them into that. These types of experiences are something that every games platform needs in their stable, right? All right, so first thing to mention, this is a chunk of change, $3.6 billion for Bungie, who ostensibly the only IP is Destiny 2. But what Sony is getting, like I said, is access to that knowledge, right? Like it or love it, Destiny 2 is a long-running, successful franchise in the live service gaming sphere. So Sony acquiring that knowledge off the bat, that's going to be a big boon for them. All right, so Jim Ryan, CEO of PlayStation, in an interview with Games Industry, has said the first thing to say unequivocally is that Bungie will stay an independent, multi-platform studio. And that approach will apply to future Bungie releases. That is unequivocal. Unequivocal. This is amazing PR speak, right? Because unequivocal, right? Let's see what's that in the dictionary. Leaving no doubt, unambiguous. So, no doubt about it, Destiny 2 games are gonna be multi-platform. In the interview, it also kind of was pressed on, hey, does that include rival consoles? Yes. So it's gonna stay PC, it's gonna stay on Xbox, it's gonna be on PlayStation, it's gonna be everywhere, right? Destiny is not going the route of these other PlayStation studios where it's brought in and it's exclusive to PlayStation and maybe a few years down the road ported to PC. I think that's very interesting he used unequivocal so many times because it's kind of a nice way of throwing a little shade at Phil Spencer because, recently and kind of ever since the ZeniMax acquisition, people have been dissecting all of his tweets, all of his statements, every interview Phil gives. Really, they're looking at it like, new comments from the head of Xbox. Let's look a little closer. Is that actually what it... Oh, it's the Riddler from Batman. Gotta watch out. What's desire, Phil? You look at me, Phil. Intent, Phil? It's your intent? All right, so Jim Ryan goes on to say that Bungie will operate autonomously within Sony. And he points out that, hey, yeah, we've grown studios organically. We've also made some acquisitions over the year, right? Naughty Dog, Guerrilla Games, Sucker Punch Productions, most recently Insomniac. Now, you could argue that those studios, well, yeah, they were acquired. They built a relationship over the years with Sony that was very much like they were already kind of a Sony studio in a lot of ways, right? Most of their games were going there. Now, Bungie, that's not the case, right? Bungie rose to fame, right, by, hey, they invented Halo for Microsoft, right? Then they were working with Activision on Destiny and Destiny 2, which was multi-platform. Now they're going under the Sony umbrella. They're going to stay multi-plat. And, Jim Ryan makes a point here to say we're going to give them the space and the independence while bolstering them with great support. But the interesting thing is the autonomously. I think that's odd. Like, I'm kind of curious to see what that looks like in 5 years, right? Like, how much autonomy does Bungie have? Is the autonomy just to decide what platforms they publish on? Is Sony going to insist that Bungie keeps all of their stuff in whatever subscription service comes out, right? Is Bungie going to be a part of Project Spartacus? Does Bungie have right of refusal on that? What is autonomous, right? Is Sony really going to allow Bungie to decide, hey, we're kind of done with Destiny, right? Do they have that much freedom? I don't think so, right? I'm interested to see how that works long term and if that's a viable strategy or if Sony is going to have to come in and renegotiate terms and kind of come in a little more heavy handed because you also have to wonder, if you're, Santa Monica Studios, what is this that Bungie gets all this autonomy, right? What if you're Bin Studio and you're getting shot down on wanting to do a Days Gone sequel, but Bungie can make whatever they want? I don't know. It's interesting. It's kind of interesting. All right, so moving on from my speculation of how the deal will play out, we do know that Sony is planning on launching more than 10 live service games. So during their latest earnings call, CFO Hiroki Totoki said, through close collaboration with Bungie and the PlayStation studios, we aim to launch more than 10 live service games by the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2026. So 10 live service games by the first quarter of 2026. That's a heck of a feat, right? So you got to imagine they're going to be leaning pretty heavily on Bungie's know-how on how to get this stuff up and running, and we're probably going to be seeing a lot of live service games from a lot of Sony first-party studios where there's a big push. I think that's all going to tie into Project Spartacus, right? They need content for the subscription service. One thing we've seen from Xbox's Game Pass is the multiplayer element is a large part of getting people to subscribe and kind of engineering that FOMO, right? So we'll see what happens there. So overall, I think this is part of Sony's strategy to expand beyond the console, right? They're porting games to PC. There's a subscription service coming in Spartacus. Cloud streaming is coming in a much more, I think, involved way than what PlayStation Now was. So it's curious to see like where Sony's going to go with this, what their overall strategy is. They want to expand their ecosystem, right? And I think for now, the PS5 will remain the premier experience. But you got to imagine if we ever get to a place where there's a release date parity between the PS5 and the PC, depending on the rig you got at home, the PC might become the premier experience to play PlayStation Studio games. Very interesting. I think obviously they're looking at the Xbox model and they're realizing we need to kind of adapt to this. But I think there's going to obviously be some pretty major differences between the way Microsoft and Sony approach this. All right, so obviously if you want all of the knowledge and know-how at Bungie to be, osmosis over to the other PlayStation Studio teams, you need those employees to stick around, which is why almost a third of the 3.6 billion, 1.2 billion is being allocated to employee retention to keep the right people in place so Sony can get like kind of the max benefit and all the knowledge they need from the deal. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, overall, I think the Sony acquisition of Bungie is interesting. And I'm remaining positive about all of this consolidation, right? With Microsoft eating up ABK, Sony grabbing Bungie now, and both have kind of said, hey, we're really not done with these acquisitions, right? There's more to come. I think we're definitely going to see more from Sony this year. Microsoft is probably sitting and kind of waiting to see how everything pans out with Activision before they keep snapping things up. Look, I think there's a version of reality where this is terrible, and all this consolidation leads us to some like hellish landscape where there's like two major gaming companies. They own everything, and all the games are just like NFT, crypto bullshit. I'm optimistic that this is natural growing pains of an industry exploding in popularity and becoming the dominant form of media. I think we're seeing a lot of third-party devs rise up and come in, and new companies kind of take the place of some of these ones that are getting bought out, right? Embracer Group, not a lot of people are talking about. They've got like 80 to 86 IPs, I believe. And then you've got like Devolver Digital, who just went public for a valuation just under $1 billion. In my opinion, Devolver Digital is like one of the companies to watch. They are my favorite indie publisher. When I see the Devolver Digital logo, whether or not the game's in my genre or not, I know it's going to be quality. So I'm very excited to see what they do. I think you've got groups like Focus Interactive. Obviously, you still got EA, Take-Two, Ubisoft. And I know these companies aren't done, right? Like Sony and Microsoft have said, we're not done with acquisitions. I think we're going to see more of an aggressive year from Sony. I think Microsoft is going to play it a little bit cooler as they wait for Activision to finalize. But yeah, right now, I'm still optimistic. This isn't going to be the end of the world for gaming. Let's hope this video doesn't age poorly and we don't exist in a hellscape where like Taco Bell provides all of our games. All right, on that note of doom and gloom, like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you'd like to hear more of my rambling, and I'll see you next week. Good games, y'all.